Today, I talked with Ryan Holsapple. Ryan is Ryan is the exemplar of the inner philosopher encapsulated into a human being. That's what I think. He's a very smart guy. Somebody I did a discussion with his brother, but me and Ryan talked about all sorts of stuff. It was like a cluster of meaning, is what it felt like. We went off just. There was a through line, but it's like the sense of meaning is the marker of the through line, rather than content. And I mean, maybe that's Cancerians for you. I don't know. But yeah. So me and Ryan just talked and tried to get somewhere useful, and yeah, we talked. Okay, so we talked about David Hume, Nietzsche. We started talking about his subpersonality psychology, and maybe should have stayed on that track, but then we went into integrating experience, or recognizing and being conscious of your experience. So, and then it went from kind of this platform or that platform. Yeah. So I hope you enjoy my talk with Ryan Holsapple. Me and Ryan are good buddies, and we talked a lot through. I mean, we've talked a little bit, and every time it's meaningful and engaging. Yeah. So enjoy Ryan Holsapple. Get a bit honest. Just a conversation, might be like. Hello, Ryan.
Hey, brother. How are you?
Hey, dude. I'm good. I'm doing pretty. Yeah. Pretty well. Yeah. Dude, it's good to see you.
Nice.
Man.
Yeah, man. It's great to see you.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Oh, okay. I am just getting up. Sort of. Yeah. Just got the
Gotcha.
Yeah, I got the basics, but yeah. All right. So
Nice.
Yeah. So what are we doing?
Who's on your shirt?
This is Billy Graham. Yeah, he was.
Who's Billy? Forgive me for my ignorance.
Okay. We've been talking about him a little bit on the Discord, but he's like a American evangelicalism, I think you would call it. Like he was an evangelist, and he like filled up stadiums and was like this just wildly popular guy. He was sort of like, he was almost like Peterson in the sense of like his speaking power.
Wow.
And yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. He's crazy. But yeah, so I'm recording. I usually just like start recording.
That's all good.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm doing good on this end. Yeah.
For sure. Good. Nice.
Yeah. Do you want to give yourself an introduction?
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So my name is Ryan Holsapple, and I'm a transformational facilitator, which entails a process of self-inquiry that I guide clients through that involves identifying parts of who they are. We call them subpersonalities, and putting them in dialogue. And the lineage that it's related to is different forms of Gestalt therapy, blended with some Jungian practices and Dr. Roger Strachan's self-soul-spirit model. So that's what I do with clients. And then I also have my own podcast called Transformational Psychology with Ryan Holsapple.
We'll link that.
And I also have a master's degree in depth psychology at Pacifica Graduate Institute, where I'm currently studying for my PhD. So that's kind of what I'm doing currently, among some other things, but those are some important highlights. And then who I am underneath all of the external presentations. I'm a spiritual seeker of meaning. I'm a philosopher. I like to make sense of ideas. I'm a lover of life. I'm someone who tries to struggle through life in a benevolent way, sometimes gracefully, sometimes not so gracefully. I'm someone who loves athletic activities and people, nature, and yeah, I'm all about continuing to strive for the best present moment possible. So that's how I look at myself today. You ask me tomorrow, I'll have a different answer for you.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have like the accolades, and then maybe the spirit that kind of like flows underneath, or
yeah. The accolades are just externals. It's what I really care about in life is who people are. Yeah.
And also the Abel in the Cain and Abel brother dichotomy. That's what I think anyway. I don't know if you guys have made that parallel, right?
Are you thinking with my brother Colton?
Yes.
Yeah, because you've had him on your podcast.
Yeah.
You think he's Cain?
Yeah.
I always thought so too. Which isn't good news for me, because that means I'm dead. No, we've gone through. I mean, the hostile brotherhood it's incredible. Actually, an archetypal dynamic that Peterson articulates in a profound way here in Maps of Meaning, which I don't know if you've read, but it's worth the time if you ever have the time. It definitely takes a lot of time to read.
Yeah. First part
of it. Anyways, he goes through that a lot, and it's what's the most important is to deal with the hostile dynamics within oneself, which you could say gets manifested through the symbolic, psychological realm of the shadow and the hero within you, right? But it's interesting because obviously Colton and I have played out the hostile brotherhood dynamic in the external world as well. But the point I'm making is that we've each played Cain and we've each played Abel, depending on the context. So these archetypes are kind of nebulous. They're not fixed in concrete.
Yeah. I was actually thinking about that with reference. I was watching a movie last night, and just how, like, I don't know, when you live life, or when you try and like integrate like an idea of fullness into like your being, you can watch something and see like, oh, I have this aspect of me, and this, like, you can start to relate with like if you're watching a film, you can relate with all the characters you relate with some more, but then like you just like get this picture, like, and I don't know if films like intend, like, I don't know if you've seen Crazy Stupid Love. I just happened to watch that, like,
I think maybe a long time ago.
Okay. It's kind of it's an odd, weird movie, just basically about love, but you could see, like, I could see like the archetype being constellated not through any one single, like just the dynamics of all the characters. Like, and I don't know if the filmmakers, they just end up doing that when they try and elaborate on like a theme like love, basically.
Yeah, that's interesting, Shane. From a Jungian perspective, many post-Jungians, just Jungians that are after Jung, have said the same thing. You can look at each character in a film as a part of the greater self, as a representation of one psyche, rather than as distinct separate entities. You can look at them as an interplay of psychodynamics within one psychic entity. And that's a really interesting way to look at film. And it's a nice heuristic, actually. It tends to amplify dynamics in a useful way.
Yeah. No. Oh yeah. So you mean like okay, I definitely think I get what you
I'm just echoing pretty much what you said, which is that every character in the film actually could be a part of you. Right. As the viewer, or the other way of looking at it is that every character in the film is actually a part of the protagonist. That's another way of looking at it.
Okay, and then I guess that leads to a question, just as like, so you have your master's, and I don't know how like trained you are, how much like you've thought about, like, how do you observe your psychological like dynamics, like as they're playing out, like in order to like stay in touch or stay in contact with those like entities, or like stay in contact with what's going on inside.
I love that. Well, as I kind of prefaced, I used that approach of identifying subpersonalities. But what it really comes down to is phenomenology. And Carl Jung was a phenomenologist, and Gestalt therapy is applied phenomenology. It's taking the principles of the philosophy of phenomenology and applying it to an actual therapeutic experience. So really, the first thing is to strip things down to first principles. Oftentimes, what happens is we take concepts and we try to lay them over experiences, which can be useful if they map onto each other in a robust way. It can be problematic if the abstractions the ideas that we have about the self don't actually adequately become vehicles of explanation for the self. So the first step is to really observe one's feelings, behaviors, urges, drives, competing narratives, whatever you want to call it. Some people are more auditory, some people are more visual. So some people have an inner monologue, some people don't have an inner monologue. And actually just taking note of what's happening. So then from there, what you can do is start to identify themes, persons, I would call them, persons, subpersonalities. They are dynamisms of agency in their own right. So they have their own force of intentionality. And that's where you might find, oh, I see. So the thinker in me or the philosopher in me is just really has this drive towards intellectual pursuits. The lover in me has this drive towards loving. The poet in me wants to make beauty out of life, wants to see the beauty in life. The black hole in me, the self-critic, we can call him, wants to find all the reasons or come up or make up reasons why I'm insufficient. And then just from those observations, like, you start coming up with titles for the different parts of who you are. And that does map onto Jung's archetypes. And it at the same time also allows for a leading edge of your own unique being, right? Because you're not an archetype. You're actually a unique combination of novel genetics that have been wired into the brain and then further wired through life experience into distinct ways of being, perceiving, and acting. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. Especially the observation of what's happening, because I'm much more like visual. Like what comes up for me is definitely it's impulses. Like, okay, this is it seems a lot of like this is where you need to go next, whether it be like psychologically or like if I'm just like standing, or it's like, where do I need to go psychologically? And then it's like, okay. And then there's, there's a point where it's like, okay, thinking's check. Now let's start like acting. And and that's sort of like the dynamic that plays out. And I found it hard sometimes, like when I'm if I'm at work or whatever, like sometimes there is points where I'm like, something needs to be thought. Like I need to and I've thought about like whether or not that's like a desire for like the moment, or like for some sort of like for positive emotion, so that I can keep doing what I'm doing. Like I've thought about why.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is a good example. It's the old Socrates quote, right? The unexamined life is not worth living. So what you're trying to figure out is what is this that's arising in my conscious experience? What is it? What is the basis of it? What
Right.
are
The
its
meaning.
qualities? Yes. Yeah. What are the qualities of this experience, and what is the, let's say, the teleology, right? What's the aim? What's the aim of this particular perspective? Or James Hillman, who's a psychologist, would call it perspectival, right? There's all these different parts of us that view the world in different perspectives. So the question is, it's not always why, but it's who inside of me is speaking. What are they saying? How are they being? It's because why is a trap in a
Right.
lot of ways. Why is a trap question? And I'll say a little more about that. Why is a trap question? Because Dr. Strauken talks to me about this all the time. If a little kid bangs the pots and pans around, or knocks something off the porch, or makes a mess in some way, we have a culture that is trained to say, well, why'd you do that? Right? And so the little kid gets this messaging from his environment that he's supposed to have a good reason. So he'll make up a story. But really, the most honest answer is something approximating, I felt like it. So we have this, right, I felt like it. We have this society that promotes bullshitting a little bit, because we always want a story about why we do what we do.
Right.
Instead of just saying, well, what is it inside me that's doing what it wants to do? We don't assume that people just want to do what they want to do. We assume that they're reacting to some primary cause in a secondary way.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So the invitation is to flip that on its head and look at those actions, behaviors, impulses as sufficient reasons in and of themselves.
You think always? Like, is there a qualifier? Like, I'm just trying to think. Like, when it seems like a useful, like, why did I do this? Like, I guess then I go into like, oh, like I wanted this, and it has to do with like, oh, biology, right? Or like why, like why did I get a drink of water? Because I'm thirsty. Like because I felt like it. Almost seems to like do away with the causation that I feel like I'm comfortable with. Like I'm
Right.
comfortable.
Well, there's certainly a network of causes that has antecedents, right? Like, why did I want to go for a run? Well, I inherited a certain amount of complex genetics for athleticism. I grew up in a situation that promotes exercise, and I clung to that because I was attracted to it. I love the feeling that I get when I exercise. I mean, there's a lot of causal relationships happening, but the point is that that's actually approaching the question from a different framework of science. Like, that's a scientific stream of causes that relate to choices that we make. But still, in the moment, we do things because we want to do them. Now, there might be another part of us that didn't want that, right? So there might be another part of us that didn't want to do that thing. But whoever, Freud taught us that there's only so much energy in the system. So at any given moment, only a couple parts of who you are going to be having the energy and using it. So there's a limited amount of energy in a human system, and that energy is going to be allocated in some way. The question why has another framework, Shane, which is the way that we use it in society, which is excuses. See, that there's a difference between there's two different kinds of why is what I'm trying to say, at least as far as I can tell right now in this moment. There's the why that is looking at causal relationships, and there's the why that is looking for a story to justify. It's called a post hoc rationalization. And those are the whys, those are the stories that we tell ourselves to justify our behavior, even though they're often not even connected to the primary reason in the first place. And Jonathan Haidt talks about this in his book, The Righteous Mind. Dr. Strachan talks about this in some of his papers, post hoc rationalizations. David Hume was a philosopher who talked about that that reason is a slave to the passions.
Right. That's how
it's not. So my point is that it's not that the question why is always invalid. It's that the way that we ask it is often invalid. The agenda that we use it, for.
Gotcha. Is it sort of like to, and you can tell me if this is wrong, but sort of like to assign like a story, but also maybe like blame. Like I was thinking about like your example.
It's blame. It's blaming it on something because we're afraid to. A lot of us as human beings are afraid to just own our experiences based on the authenticity of the present moment, which is to say that the reason that I'm talking to you right now is because the philosopher in me loves to talk about ideas.
Yeah.
I don't need a bullshit story about that.
Yeah.
So oftentimes, right. So oftentimes powerful transformational work is about actually cutting through the story, which is just bullshit most of the time, and getting to the core of the authentic experience.
Okay. Yeah.
So Roger always said, Dr. Strachan always says, people do what they want to do at any given moment, and then they make up a reason after the fact.
Yeah. I've
It's a different way of viewing the world, isn't it? Because we're not used to we're not trained in our society to think that way.
Yeah. I definitely like that's almost how like I've tried to live is like I remember people would get mad at me when I would like live my life right the way, try and live based on my my like not not putting my desires to the wayside, like trying to think, okay, what do I want, and what do I like want in a way that's good, right? That's going to fulfill me. And people would get like irritated when why'd you do that? My answer was like, because I wanted to, like, and that would like,
Other people were irritated, or
yeah,
you were?
other people, and
Yeah, right.
but there was
Right.
usually a reason. Like if like I wanted to do something, I would try and have a good reason, or like um, a principle behind it. Like part of what I wanted to do, it's like I want to go to work, and it makes, and there's like I'm doing it because not because I'm forced to, but because I really like want to. And that's,
Right.
I think can be like healthy, right? To go based on move forward based on like maybe like a principle of like, what do I need to do to actualize my best like self, or my, yeah.
Right.
And that's,
Uh,
yeah.
just so you know, you're breaking up a little bit, so it's
Okay.
just freezing, and I lost a few words. So hopefully the listeners will be able to hear us okay.
Okay, for sure.
But I'll try to pick up on what I heard you just said. What I heard you say was that you often do things because you have a deeper purpose in mind that's oriented towards self-betterment. Am I right about that?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I think, let me go back to the question why, because I think this is what we're getting at. I said to you, there's two different kinds of whys. I want to try a different way of explaining that. There's why and there's how, right? So why would be the trying to find some underlying framework of purpose that goes back further than the present moment action that's being enacted. You with me?
The why that goes beyond the present.
Let me say that again.
Okay.
So when we're asking why, we're looking for something that goes beyond the present moment action. It's trying to find an antecedent.
Right. Yes.
Okay. You're free. You froze a little bit. Okay.
Okay.
So, but then there's how, right? So really, I think what you're saying is that there's a how, there's a mechanism through which these things happen. How did that happen? Well, how did I'll take a drink. How did that happen? Well, I extended my arm. I clasped my hand around it. I bent my elbow. And then you could go underneath that. Well, how did that happen? Well, there's all these complex processes going on in my neurophysiologies that enables that action. But there really is no why in that process. It's not like my body's thinking about why. It's just doing what it's doing. It's a how thing.
Right.
The why is just typically, it's a present moment oriented discussion. And I don't think there's any time that it doesn't come down to, because that's what I wanted to do. I don't actually think there's any situation where that wouldn't be the answer.
Well, there's, okay. So what would you, okay. So like, just for the sake of like, uh, discussion, like the case of, in a book like Ordinary Men, where they, would kill innocent civilians,
Right.
or something like it.
Right.
You know, the idea of like, you know, being forced to, you know, just a scenario as crazy as like, oh, here's a gun, kill, you know, your son or you both die, or like, or some, or
Right.
like something crazy like that.
Right. So those would be constraints on choice.
Mhm.
And within those constraints, the choice would be the one that has the most energy in the human psyche at the moment.
Right.
So it's still what you choose. You want, you do whatever
Yeah.
within those constraints, right? We always have constraints. You know,
Yeah.
I can't just fly right now. I can't sprout wings, right? I can't just will my way into the air. But within the constraints of this room that I'm in with these four walls, and my access to a door and other options that I have, there are a variety of situations that I can assess and sequence through based on whatever sub-personalities inside of me have the most energy. And they do what they want to do. Now, with ordinary men, I'm going to take it back to the idea of attraction and connection. So,
Sure.
whatever our personal makeup is, every human being is unique. Everyone's a little different. No two human beings are exactly the same. So, whatever our personal makeup is going to encounter the environment, and that encounter is going to stimulate a response from my personal makeup. So, if I have parts of me in my psychophysiological being that are prone to abuse, being abusive, or being submissive in some way, or like, for example, let's say I'm submissive to the government, and if they tell me to be abusive, then that also encounters the abusive part of me and the submissive part of me at the same time. So I'm both a victim and a perpetrator in that situation. But I have to have the internal makeup to act out those propositions. You cannot act on something unless there's a proclivity within you to act on it.
Right.
So in Ordinary Men, which is a book I haven't read, but let's just take what Jordan Peterson has said about it and what you said about it.
Yeah.
What I
I've
understand
read a
is
little
that
bit.
what I understand is that these were supposedly ordinary men, which I would argue there is no such thing as ordinary men because everybody's different, and that's
Sure.
so. Let's start with that, and then the second proposition is that these ordinary men were taken and put in a situation where they were made to do something they didn't want to do, which I just think is bullshit.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So
They might not have done it in a different government, but the fact of the matter is that whatever was suggested to them clung on to a part of them that was prone to acting in that way.
Right.
So there's plenty of, maybe they're more rare, but there are instances within the Holocaust or within communist Russia or other horrifying situations where people were presented with the opportunity to be gruesome and abusive, and they didn't, because it didn't connect with the parts of them. They either had done the previous integration of their personality so that they were able to control their impulses, or maybe they didn't have a killer inside of them who had bloodlust. Either way, I love Jordan Peterson's teachings. I've never resonated with his idea that you could turn anybody into a Holocaust camp guard. I think that it makes sense on a statistical basis that could be the case for many people, but I don't think it's a universalizable proposition. I don't think it actually scales indefinitely. I think there's limits to that claim. So I would push back on that a little bit. It's not to say that his point is without merit, because his point is that if you don't encounter the monster within you and learn how to integrate it into a benevolent cause for your life, then if it's presented with the opportunity, it could wreak havoc on yourself and others in a way that's incredibly grotesque. Like, fair enough. That's a great thing to know, and damn right we should integrate our personality. But I don't buy that we all have the same personality and that we'd all do the same thing given the same opportunity. You have to always remember circular reasoning. It's when we accept a proposition, a premise, we accept a premise, and then we continue to use confirmation bias to justify that premise. So, oh, we took these ordinary men. Well, first premise is that they were ordinary men that were like any other man. Well, that's not true. Second premise is that you can take these people and make them do something. Well, you have to ask the question. They were police officers, right?
Yes.
So they clearly had the temperamental predisposition, psychologically speaking, to be police officers. Do you have the temperamental predisposition to be a police officer, Shane?
I might. I mean, I've thought.
I don't know if you do. I'm just curious.
I thought when I was a kid, like I wanted to be. I was like, I'm going to be a police officer.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't. I've never wanted to be a police officer. It doesn't resonate with me. It's not part of my innate genetic makeup. It's just not. It's obviously I'm simplifying here. There's no genes for being a police officer, but the phenotypic expression that is being a police officer doesn't resonate with my biological makeup.
Yeah.
So there's see what I mean? There's a false premise there.
Yeah.
These were people that were obviously already interested in wielding some level of power over others. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. There's actually a lot of fantastic police officers that are incredible men and women out in the world. But my point is, it takes a certain type of person to do a certain type of thing. And so I don't believe that we can use these instances and then use circular reasoning to justify why you could make anybody do a certain set of actions.
Okay. So the first thing I was thinking was like, well, first, yeah, like when, like, what I was thinking was when I was a kid, there was a like a connection to, and I still feel like a connection to authority. Like if I feel something's a correct authority, like I do feel like a it's almost like a you might call it like a subservience, or like oh, like if something's good to be under the umbrella of, like that's I mean, umbrellas can be good unless you're in Raccoon City, and then they eat everyone, or the zombies do, but yeah. So I have felt like when I was a kid, yeah, being a cop, or like the archetypal like investigator, like that's one thing I remember about being a kid. And then like the separately, like the ordinary men thing, like I'm wondering, like, is there an archetypal, like you know, an ordinary man that people can like connect to more than others, like the everyman, like that just sort of makes you kind of
well,
ordinary.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. You're asking, to what degree can we confide in our universal humanness?
Right.
Am I right? Is that kind of the question?
Well, yeah, it's like when, like, is there, I think there is like a behavior, almost like behaviors associated with the, you know, an ordinary man, or like a mental
there's only spectrums of different polygenic clusters that wire the brain into its unique delimited capacity, and then further phenotypically expresses in the environment. Do some of those expressions happen to be more congruous than others within the context of a given social framework? Yes, but it's all the way that it's being epigenetically expressed within a particular situation. There is no such thing as normal. It doesn't exist. Normal is an idea that we use as in it's, have you know the word apopatreic?
No.
It's a word, it's a word to describe that which wards off magic or chaos.
Gotcha.
Okay, so we use categories and labels and social contracts to ward off the potential for havoc. So we create normal as a way to negotiate a lifestyle so that each individual and the collective can live in a somewhat coherent reality where you can expect certain things to be the rules of the social contract, and you can expect certain things to be abnormal or concerning, which would make you say, oh no, that's not normal. That's not, if somebody, ran across your front yard naked, it's not that objectively speaking there's something universally bad about that. It's that within the human sphere of social predictability that we've set up, that's a red flag to many people, because we like predictability and we like to be able to put things in categories that we can expect because it helps us ward off chaos. It's an apopatreic. So
Okay. Yeah.
so there is
like
no,
the
the
social
normal is
boundary.
just an idea, Shane. It does, like look at trees. What is similar about them? Well, they're trees.
Right.
But within,
There's almost like a culture.
yeah, they're like they share a lot in common. They share a lot of the same makeup, and at the same time, the way that they're expressed is incredibly unique.
Okay.
So yes, you could look at you, and then you could look at me and be like, well, they both got, two legs, two arms. They got a nose. They got eyes. They got ears. They kind of look like hairless monkeys. They've got these things in common. They breathe air. They got a heartbeat. So there's these are things that make us human.
Yeah.
But as far as normal goes, I mean, there's so many things that also make us unique.
Yeah.
So like, let's take Elon Musk for example. He probably ran into some fortuitous opportunities in his life where things went the right way, and he's got a super brain that's really good at engineering, and good for him.
Yes.
He won the genetic lottery. Well, maybe not good for him, because he has to work. He doesn't have to. He works 90-hour weeks, and I think he drives himself a bit mad with all his projects. The point is,
a lot.
He's a very unique human being, and he's at the extremes of uniqueness, obviously. But every human being is unique. It's just a matter of where their uniqueness lies.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I think there is. I think every person has something that they can extend to, extend to a proportion that makes them, really valuable for humanity, or for for being an expression. Like sometimes I think
yes.
people like being an expression of a principle, right? Or like a single, like people can be very potent expressions of who they are, right? Of that, like Elon Musk, I would think, like, computing power, or
exactly,
or like that's sort of like
that's right,
potent.
See, that's why that's why we go back to first principles with this work. And what first, just for people in the audience that aren't familiar, it just means that we strip away all the ideas that surround the psychology of being human, and we go back to what are we experiencing, and we observe the basis, the basics of our experience, and then we build a psychology of self based on that phenomenology. And that's a robust way of self-discovery, rather than taking an idea and saying, well, I have to find a way to apply this idea and cram it into my uniqueness. It's start with the uniqueness and then find the ideas that resonate with the uniqueness. And that's a powerful way of moving through life rather than the other way around. Because otherwise, you're always going to live in a way that's trying to fit a square through a round hole. It's not
Okay.
gonna.
Okay. So so like the idea of, be like, I think an idea like an abstract, be a good person. I think like you can have that principle, and it also like maybe connects to you on a biological level. Like there is.
Yes, but it has to be filtered through what does good mean to the person that you happen to be, and who do you happen to be that's capable of being what you call good, and how do you define good? Do you define good based on other people and what they tell you is good, or do you have a soulful phenomenological experience of goodness inside of yourself that you can then extrapolate and use as a moral principle or a guiding star in your life? These are not arbitrary questions.
Yeah.
Most people live their lives responding to other people and societal ideas.
Yeah.
Heidegger called it the one or the they. They do this. They say that. One brushes his teeth. Why? Because that's what one is supposed to do. One gets a job because that's what one does. What's that?
It reminds me of Neumann's like work on like philosophy based on like depth psychology. Basically, I don't know how much your like depth psychology and a new ethic. Like he was basically talking about something like the managing the relationship between like the herd and the individual.
Yes. Yeah. And so here's the nuance. I'm not trashing societal frameworks. They're incredibly useful and important, and that's how we're social animals. So we have a deep and profound wellspring of shared, we could call them agreed upon values, and also functional values, not just made up dogmas, but functional values that are based in thousands of years of history that we've passed down and we continue to propagate because they're functional as far as being able to thrive and survive as a species, and also allowing individuals to have some sense of safety and being held within a greater container. So that it's not, I'm not saying it's arbitrary, but what's arbitrary is stopping there. It's just living a society-directed life. A soul-directed life is different than a society-directed life. A soul-directed life is reflecting on what are in Gestalt, they're called introjects. What are the things that we've swallowed whole and that have connected onto parts of us that we accept as real arbitrarily? Right. So let's go back to Nietzsche's 3 transformations of the spirit. You start as a camel. You pick up a load. You live in society. You become a member of the herd. You accept all these absurd propositions, some of which are more functional and reasonable, some of which might just be absurd, period, point blank. Then you become the lion, if you're lucky, because most people never go beyond the camel. They just live this life of just being accustomed to whatever the social standards are. Well, the lion slays the dragon called thou shalt. That's the world of the fathers that I think Neumann also talks about. That's the world of the introject. That's the world of you should do this and you shouldn't do that because I said so, because that's what we say. The one just does these things, Ryan. They just do that. You have to be a part of the one. that's all great in terms of the masses. Doesn't work so well if you want to be an individual living a meaningful life. So you got to slay the dragon called thou shalt. Not in the sense that you abandon all societal contracts, but in the sense that you take it upon yourself to define your own image, define and to discover who you are and figure out what's true for you. And the chips fall where they may at that point. Some of those values might line up with society, and some of them might fall away and burn off, like the dead wood that Jordan Peterson talks about. That is dead wood. Then you become the child. The lion slays the dragon, which frees you up to become the child. What is that? That's your pure, authentic spirit. That's how you were born before the world put you into the world of shoulds and should nots and tangled you all up in a mess of ideas that were never your own. And you get to be vulnerable in front of yourself, in front of the world in this new way, in this childlike capacity, going back to Christ. Unless you become like a little child, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. It's what Campbell refers into in his interviews that he talks about in his famous The Power of Myth interviews, I think. He refers to Nietzsche's idea of a wheel that rolls out of itself. That's the authentic life. That's a soul-directed life. I'm a wheel that rolls out of itself. I live from my heart, from my core, from my essence, from my being. That's, to me, that's where all the juice of transformation is, Shane. So, yeah. Yes, thank you for letting me go on that long tangent. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. That's awesome. So do you want to go, like you were talking about Heidegger, and I know like some friends who are into Heidegger. I don't know like where you're going there before I interrupted with the Eric Neumann.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was just talking about the idea of Heidegger's idea of the they or the one, which, yeah, I think I covered it. I think it's to be found in many great thinkers. You know, that concept of you referred to Neumann. Jung talks about the masses. We just talked about Nietzsche. I mean, it's a perennial idea of the individual versus the collective, and how to live a meaningful life in the face of the masses.
Okay. And that was yeah, I didn't realize that was an element of Heidegger. When I think of Heidegger, I just think of like being in, it's almost like just seeing the world as like just walking around looking at the world and like
Yes.
letting your experience speak for itself. I don't know if that's
yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert on Heidegger. I've read Being and Time and dabbled in a few other things, and I loved it. It was life-changing. He makes it a point several times that he's not prescribing anything. He's not saying what should or shouldn't be. He's just trying to describe what is. But he does talk about living authentically. He talks about anticipatory resoluteness, which is just a way of embracing one's existential dilemma, the fact that they're a limited being and will die, and that death could be potentially imminent. And instead of fleeing into the they, coming to a sense of resolute authenticity within oneself. I mean, he illuminates possibilities of greater being without saying that you should or shouldn't live that way. He's just trying to talk about the dynamics of being human and how we do often get trapped in these, social frameworks that aren't always serving us as individuals in the most authentic sense.
Okay. Very, very cool.
So his whole idea was that we have this idea of dread. There's dread. It's existential anxiety, basically. So I think within that is death, right? And being a limited being in the face of a awe-inspiring and terrifying universe. And so his idea is that to cope with dread, we flee into this everyday coping, which includes kind of losing oneself in the they. And so we cope with it. Again, let's go back to the word apopatreic. And I don't even know if that's the way you pronounce it, because I'll only ever read it and I never hear anyone say it. But the idea is that we use these structures to ward off the chaos of being a finite being, and how scary that can actually be. And so sometimes the price that we pay for that chaos antidote is we lose our authenticity.
Right.
So a lot of the great existentialists, I think, and the great psychologists are helping us embrace chaos in a more profound way, so that we don't have to sacrifice our authenticity, and we also don't have to lose ourselves in the whims of the epic scale of the universe, or the craziness of the world. And essentially the idea is that maybe it is possible to have it both ways, just that it takes some careful intentionality. Anyways, so I hope that, I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah. Well, that's that. Just the idea of like it's awesome, the prospect of being able to it's almost like you talked about, like the epic experience and the like that's going on outside, and like being able to it almost seems like hold that in your mind without, like, it's like being able to hold that in your mind in order to be a well, I don't know, sometimes it seems like the observing is enough, or serves to, like, satiate some sort of, like, it almost, to me it seems like an individual need to just, like, feel what's being felt without like oh gosh, it's almost like, I don't know, it's hard to explain, like an acceptance of what's going on, and that's it. Like, and
yeah,
having, and
yeah,
like, yeah. And there's something like like being, I guess, being able to be inspired by the craziness, and see, like, how there's a glorious element that's kind of like, or an element that's at least can, like, get you out of bed and working on stuff, rather than, like, uh I don't know, I guess it's just like a positive orientation towards what's going on, rather than a negative orientation.
yeah. It reminds me of the saying that awareness can be curative. Awareness can be curative. However, typically, in my experience, awareness is only half the battle. The second half is choice. So self-awareness will get us to the point where we can see our choices and see our possibilities. And then it's up to us to take up our own existential position towards life and make certain choices. So that's going back to, let's go back to the existentialists, like we've all heard people, or a lot of us have heard people talk about the Kierkegaardian leap of faith, where you make a choice, you commit yourself to a certain path. So yeah, I think both are essential, awareness
Okay.
and choice.
Yeah. Yeah. um
But I hope I made sense today, because I know I'm a little scattered, but I hope that from everything from the idea of post hoc rationalizations, and that we do what we want to do, to the idea of living authentically, and how we can get lost in what other people are saying or what the greater framework of society is imposing on us, to this idea of awareness and choice. What my hope is that the listeners can see that there's a through line, in each of these topics that connects them in a meaningful and coherent way.
Yeah. And then I think part of my interview style is like I can jump in.
No, it's great. I don't mind at all. I think it's fun.
Oh, word.
Yeah. But I just hope that I made sense, because it felt like we got pretty dense.
Yeah.
And I don't want to lose people with jargon. And
yeah.
I know a lot of people will understand, but some people might not have read the things that we referred to. And the other thing I've noticed too, Shane, is that people struggle with the idea that we do what we want to do and then make up a story. Because Roger always says, Dr. Strachan always says, we live in a blame society. It's always someone else's fault why I'm not okay. Right? So we have that kind of deep belief structure that penetrates into our being. And so when we're committed to a mentality of victimhood, then it can be repulsive to hear someone say, people do what they want to do, and then they make up a story about it, because then it takes away the blame circuit. But that's not to say that right. When I say victimhood, I'm not trivializing the idea of being abused or being hurt, but there's a difference between there's two types of victimhood, right? There's experiencing injustice and being encountered by someone else or by a situation in a way that violates your being, physically, emotionally, whatever. And then there's the type of victimhood that is a mindset of how we approach what meets us.
Right.
The first one is a tragic event or series of events.
Right. It
happens and it's inexcusable, and people deserve to be heard and loved and seen for what they've experienced as traumatizing or hurtful, and they deserve protection. On the other hand, the type of victimhood that's a mentality is much more. It's much more about, it is what it is. It's what you do with it that counts. And if we want to approach life from the mentality of blame, that will only serve to continue to give our own personal power away.
Okay. And that's I was like, power is like eminently important from a like psychological perspective. Just like power to influence, right? Influence the world for a positive. Like I definitely have been thinking about like I don't know, the power from like I don't know. I feel like I've been thinking about what power is, and the like just like the power to influence. I don't know if like that's a dangerous line of thought to go down, but I do feel like there's power in power in the Lord, or like power in like personal power, and like I think mitigating the ways you give that away is like a I don't know if it's an unqualified good, but but I think like staying away from ways you give away your,
Well, we can feel it when we give away our power.
Right.
You can feel it in your stomach. If you're paying attention to your body and your emotions, you can feel it when you're just draining yourself, when you're not respecting yourself, you're not loving yourself. When maybe you betray yourself in front of others sometimes. Sometimes it's as simple as talking about yourself in a way that actually doesn't best suit you or doesn't best represent you, or letting your self-critic, let's say you have a self-critic, letting the self-critic beat up on you in a way that gives your power away. Or there's the classic examples of giving someone else the power to decide how I feel. Why did you make me feel that way? You're making me angry. You made me sad. We give our power away in a lot of ways. The honest way to say it is, I'm making myself angry. I'm making myself sad. And you could get even more honest and say, well, the angry part of me is making me angry, or the sad part of me is making me sad. See how these tautological things they seem absurd, but they're actually really true. That's actually what's happening, is that something inside of me resonated with something that happened out there and clung on to it. See, that's the important piece of every part of us does what they want to do. It clings on to things in the environment, and it gets activated in what you might call an emergent third space that transcends the previous conditions and creates new conditions. But there's such a powerful piece of all things that we experience, all things that come and go. They are all happening inside of us. Everything's an inside job. The thing I'd like to end on, Shane, is you asked earlier about someone gives you a gun and says, it was like, you either shoot this person or you do this, and you have to make a choice. I don't know if you've seen this interview, but Dr. Strachan and I did an interview where he talks about Sophie's Choice, the movie.
Okay.
And he has a very interesting answer that I think that you'll find interesting as well. So in Sophie's Choice, her and her two children are in I think it's a Polish concentration camp. And the guard says to Sophie, so she has a daughter and a son. She says, you got to pick one child. One of them's going to die. One of them's going to live. You have to pick. And I believe she picks, if I'm not mistaken, she picks the daughter, but I could be wrong. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't matter. She picks one of the kids. It's been a while since I've seen the movie. And she's crushed for the rest of her life. Just lives in the shadow of that event. She just can't get beyond it. So Roger has the funniest solution to this. He says, well, I'm never giving my power away to anybody. So here's what I would say. I'm not playing your goddamn game. If you want to hurt us, you choose yourself. I'm not making that choice for you. And his whole resolution is, I'm not going to live the rest of my life knowing that I gave my power over you to decide that I have to choose between my children. You do what you're going to do. I'm not living with that. See, he puts it back, his whole flaw. And yeah, someone had made the point, well, that might have just gotten all three of them killed. But the point is that he'd rather die than live the rest of his life having betrayed himself.
Right.
So Roger's whole idea is that Sophie betrayed herself, and that the solution is to not give the power away in the first place. They say you can't negotiate with a terrorist.
Right.
That's kind of the idea. It's you do what you're gonna do, buddy, but I'm not giving you my power. You want to kill me? You go ahead and kill me. But I'm gonna live on my feet rather than die on my knees. So there's a potential answer to your question. A lot of people aren't gonna like that answer, but I think it's an answer that has merit.
Yeah. The one problem I would have with that is that, like, there's an active component to, trying to if you can manage it, like the active component of like, okay, try and take the gun from, if the opportunity would present itself.
Right. Oh yeah. Well, Roger talks about that too. He's like, I'd take the gun. I'd do this. I mean, but either way, you're going to end up dead, most likely.
Right.
Because there's all the other prison guards there.
Right. And,
unless you could get the prison guard hostage. There's a lot of things that could happen. The point is that you don't have to give your power away. It's a choice.
Right. Yes, I absolutely love that. The idea of like, it's not like my moral decisions are mine. I'm not going to let your moral decisions affect how I'm
right.
And that's that's Kant, right? Or just like, would you lie to someone who asked about whether there was, if you were holding Jews and a Nazi asked if you would
right. Is that Kant? I haven't read enough Kant to know.
Yeah, just the and then I'll let you go because I don't know how much you got.
I've got a few more minutes and then I gotta go.
Okay. Just basically Kant was like, the categorical imperative of not lying. Like if a Nazi, his point was like, if a Nazi asked you if you were hiding Jews and you were, he was like, you tell the truth, and then I would ask like, okay, what is the truth? Are you really being true to yourself if you answer that,
right,
truthfully? But his point was like, you answer yes because it's on, like, you don't know the consequences of like lying. Like if you say no, there could be a cascade of events that was worse than had you told the truth.
Really?
And it's only so once you tell the truth, it's on them to make, like, you did the right thing.
Yeah. So I would look at that one a little differently.
Okay. How would you look at
well,
that?
Do I want to put myself in a position where I lose loved ones or lose people I'm protecting because of my own moral arrogance? In other words, it's like if a grizzly bear knocked on your door and said, can I, is it possible for me to eat your children? It's like, let's just play along with me here. Is it possible? Well, in your head, well, it's certainly possible. You could overpower them. But let's just say the grizzly bear didn't know what his capabilities were. Is it possible that I could eat your children? If you say yes, then let's just imagine that he's gonna execute the plan, and because he doesn't know what his potential for action is yet, he's not aware of his power for some reason in this hypothetical grizzly bear world. And you tell him yes, and then he'll eat your kids. I mean, to me, the moral imperative of protecting my children outweighs the moral imperative of telling the grizzly bear that he's powerful enough to eat them. So I think it's relativity is the issue. It's a competition of values. Well, my value of protecting these people is higher than my value of telling this asshole the truth.
Right. Of doing the right thing.
So yeah, I would say that we have to organize those values into a hierarchy. I think that I don't know enough about what Kant wrote on this, but I just think that that's a classic example of intellectualizing something that needs to be felt in a more humanizing way. It's almost like, it's like, come on, Kant, you're really going to, that's just seems, it almost seems like it violates common sense.
Yeah. Which is like constantly accused of, like.
Is he?
Huh? Yeah, well, just the over intellectualizing. Like there was a meme and it was like, oh, son, like it was a text message from a father and son. It's like, son, you forgot your birth control. And he's like, I don't have. What do you mean, Dad? And he took a picture of his son's copy of Kant's Critique of Pure Reason. He's like, yeah, here's your birth control, because it's like it's very over intellectualizing, and he has a lot of like very conservative.
Well, I've always loved his idea of the thing in itself. I thought that was a revolutionary idea. I mean, it's not without issues, but I've always loved that. But I need to read more of him to adequately respond. But the reason I use the grizzly bear rather than just going with the Nazi camp guard is because it dehumanizes it a little bit. It makes it less personal. It's like you're not. Let's say you're not lying to a human being. You're just telling a grizzly bear that he can't eat your kids, and he somehow, for some reason, believes it. I mean, it takes away the edge of, well, you know, how dare you tell a lie? But either way, the same principle applies.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes. Well,
maybe the grizzly bear example wasn't necessary. Maybe I could have just stuck with.
You don't tell the grizzly bear what it's that it's capable of eating your kids, because the competing, it's like the competing humanness versus like some abstract, like it's more grounded in like human values, I guess, rather than...
Right. That's kind of why I picked a grizzly bear, but I hope that it came across that way. So I wouldn't tell the camp guard. I wouldn't, I just wouldn't.
Fuck him, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like if someone asked if you had the nuclear codes and someone asked you if you had them. Let's say Kim Jong-un said, Shane, do you have the nuclear codes? You're not going to say, yeah, I have the nuclear codes, because then he's going to send his goons to come take them from you.
Right.
And then he can blow up the world.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he already has his own nuclear codes, but you get my point.
Yeah, that would open up just people could start, bad people could start asking you whatever, whatever you want. But then there's also like the, if in the Bible it talks, if you're following the right path or following God, like if somebody tries to set a trap or digs a hole, they'll fall in it themselves type thing. I take some solace in that idea every once in a while.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, well, it was great talking to you, buddy.
Dude, yeah, I love talking and I love you, man. I love you too. And it's really good. There was some stuff, I don't know, there was some stuff I wanted to ask you that I'll like message you, or we could like do this again if you wanted. Yeah.
No, that's fine. I'd love to.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Ryan.
You got it, bro. See ya.
Dude, have a good day.
You too.